So I want to start with the standards for math practice. And I really want to start here because it's a great starting point for a conversation, to start a conversation in a really productive and positive way, to give us some focus as we look through. And I've done this activity with many educators, many coaches, many teachers, many leaders, looking at some different areas we want to focus in on. And I'd like to start with the standards for math practice because across the country, we can all generally agree that these are the things we want students doing. We can generally agree these are the things we want students kind of moving forward with. So I always like to start with the question, looking at these 8 standards, looking at these standards we have, which of these standards are your students already good with? And take a minute to kind of process that. Yeah, there's some awkward silence now, but again, take a minute, even pause it if you will, to take a minute and say, what are your students already good with? Or what have they gotten better with in the past couple of months or the past year, looking at some of those pieces? And as we look at that, you could also spin that question around to which of these 8 standards do you feel you are good with helping your students to get better with? Which of these 8 standards do you really focus on in your class and say, okay, I'm pretty good with that piece? And once we've decided that, it's good to write that down to acknowledge that growth and say, hey, my students weren't here a few months ago. My students weren't here a few years ago. My students weren't here last week, but they've gotten better at those pieces. So then I like to take the next step and say, okay, let's take a minute right now and talk to you a little bit about saying, hey, which of these standards is most important to you for your students to get a little better with the next couple of months? And really take a minute right now and think, we can't focus on all 8 standards. That's not really focus. But if you could only get better with one standard or possibly two, or have your students improve on one or two, which would it be? And again, take a second to think about that. Take a second to internalize what that might be. If that wasn't enough time, go ahead and pause it here. And again, I do recommend take a minute, pause this. I know we're all in a rushed life, a rushed situation, but if we can kind of focus on what's that standard we want to focus on, then we can choose next steps that make the most sense for us. There's a whole bunch of next steps we can do, a whole bunch of next things we can do moving forward. But if we don't have that focus, we might not be able to kind of drive and actually make change. And then when we come back in a couple of weeks, a couple of months, we won't be able to see if we were effective or not. So I would challenge you to take a minute right now and choose one or two best next steps. Feel free to write that in the comments. Feel free to write that down for you, but think about what is it you want to improve upon, or what is it you want your students to improve upon in the next month, in the next 3 months, in the next year. Again, if we give ourselves a specific focus, that can help us to pinpoint some next steps. And once we have that focus set up and the drive and the direction we want to go, we can help you to kind of find some of those next steps that I've seen work really well. We have some next steps for all of the standards for math practice, and they'll continue to be kind of pushed out as we continue with this plan. So hopefully that helps for you, helps with you looking at that piece. Sorry about that misstep there, but hopefully that'll help with you as we're doing that, thinking about what's that next step we want to do, what's that next goal we want to reach, and it might already be something that the students are already good with. We just want to make it go a little bit further. But let's kind of think about that focus first. Once we have that focus determined, we can then think about, hey, what are the specific next steps we want to do to get to that focus point? Hopefully that helps. Let me know how that goes. And once you decide that focus, definitely look through some of the other videos we have. All right, Al. Have a great day.